I know.
I believe I did this correctly.
Yes, you did.
I'm calling the Finance Committee meeting. Committee members present are Council members Ballerin, O'Brien, Robinson. Also joining us are Council member, and Committee member Deshay. Council members Fahey and Love. We also have our wonderful senior legislative analyst. I think I'm making up a new title for Michelle, but she's here, Michelle Andre. We have John Rafael Pichardo. We have kind of. He's not wonderful? He is wonderful. And then the most wonderful council members that I didn't mention were Richard Conti and Kelly Kimbrough. In the audience, we have, this is a lot of work. We have Mike Wheeler, we have Nick Riley, half of the Nick team. We've got David Gallen, we've got Brian Shea, and we have Kashana and Danielle in the fabulous judicial seats. Woo! So we are here to talk about several bonding ordinances. So let's get to it. If you guys, you might want to just come up, just to, we're all friendly here. That way we can all cozy up. So the first one, and what I'd love to do is kind of talk about our APD pieces in a block. So if we talk about 23.101.19, that is the bonds to pay for the APD vehicles. So we got a good amount of information on the general vehicles and not as much information on the special use vehicles. And Nick provided a bit more information on that. I should, of course, add one of the reasons why I'm thrilled that Judy stayed on the committee is there is no possible way, no matter how much I have read these bonding ordinances, that I know them as well as her. So Judy, any moment, you are welcome to jump in and add your 2 cents. So what I'd love to do is open it up for questions if people have any questions about.
So that's.
Here we go.
Yeah, I guess.
Yep, so that's the 1.3.
I guess my question is, originally I thought we were talking about tuning it down by 1 million, but I guess we're tuning it down from the original by 400,000. So I guess maybe Judy can tell us.
We have I don't know that we were talking.
Well, no, it was originally 1.79. And I'm reading it here now.
No. That's a separate one.
Yeah, I think
okay.
Yeah, I think you're thinking of a different one.
That's not, it's not the 2018 equipment bond, that's for DPS.
This is
I'm sorry.
This is the
Focus on
the
it.
marked patrol Durangos and the unmarked patrol Durangos. So the marked and unmarked vehicles, and then all the things to like make them so that they're police vehicles as opposed to just regular Durangos. And then there's also the special use vehicles. So the majority of the bond, 1.017 million, is for the Durangos. I have talked with Mr. Wheeler about the long-term goal of moving, and I should say, hopefully it will be a shorter long-term goal of moving that into the operational side, the way that the fire department is moving in that direction. And so that's ultimately, they agree that that's a common sense thing to do. We shouldn't be borrowing for things that is a yearly expense, it's an expected expense. But I would say at this stage, they do need these vehicles. And I think that, especially when we were talking before about the morale of the police department, I think that it's important to, we want to make sure that we're fiscally responsible. We also have to make sure that we're taking care of some other important parts.
And I do want to say that this money does not exist within the operating budget. Well, if you were, what you'd be talking about is possibly for 1 year using fund balance or debt reserve. I just want to caution everybody that we still are looking at between $4 to $6 million in outstanding police contracts. We would likely have to use a significant portion of fund balance and maybe even another additional debt reserve payment to catch them up and get them into the 2020 budget, because we'd have to raise their salaries from what's in there now, which are 2014 salaries, to 2020 salaries. Already with that, we would be looking at probably eliminating half of our fund balance, which is still about half of where we need to be. So, of course, we all would love to not have to borrow for things and pay for them just outright, but we are not at this point in that position to do that. So really, I do understand the goal of wanting these yearly expenses to be within the confines of the budget. But until we get those contracts settled, until we figure out how much of this fund balance we're going to need to put it together and start looking forward to how we're going to increase revenues or decrease other costs, it's simply not an option.
If I can just, I think this particular bond, there's two separate issues with it. One is the fact that I think that we have not been provided really with any justification for especially used vehicles. They did not show up in the 5-year capital plan in 2018 or 2019. Often they're showing up. Generally, we have talked about having bonding for replacement vehicles. Usually, when you look at DGS and you look at the police department, what we're usually doing is not looking to buy new vehicles for new purposes, but to replace existing vehicles, especially given our difficult fiscal condition. And if you're looking to purchase new vehicles, then there needs to be some demonstration of I want to say, extraordinary circumstances in light of our extraordinary circumstances. So that's one part of it, is justification. I think when it comes to the APD vehicles for the marked and unmarked patrol cars, this is part of an ongoing work, spending that amount of money, and there's like a routine cycling and replacing of that. And I don't really think that there's any real debate about doing that. So there are those two different issues. When it comes to the whole issue of trying to move this to the cash side, I see this as the optimum year to do it. One, when you look at all of our other bonding that we have voted out of this committee, we are at the limits of our debt limit policy, our debt policy limits, period. There's no way around it. And also, we're looking at some very significant consequences with regard to what we have borrowed and what we're projecting to borrow when we look out at essentially around the same time that the landfill closes, we lose $6 million worth of income there. So moving this to the cash side has the advantage of providing us with some relief and additional flexibility on the borrowing side potentially, and help rectify where we're going with regard to being up against our debt policy limit. Here's the thing. So I have this chart that Nick did that I'm very appreciative of. And when we look at the bonding for 2019 for police, and I don't know if this was put in your packet, guys, again, it was distributed previously. So, 2019, we approved, this is it, earlier this year, $875,000 in bonding. And at this point, we have essentially all of that in cash position. We have only about $500,000, about half of that we've actually encumbered at this particular point in time. So here's my thought, is since next year we see a $4.5 million decrease in debt service payments, that I know some of that has to go, will probably have to go to raises. We still have, I mean, even assuming fleshing out the rest of the staff this year with 1% raise and next year with 1.2% raise, just for the sake of argument, we're looking at needing about $3 million, I think, in the cumulative effect in the 2021 budget. So that leaves us about $1.5 million there. So if you put this in the budget, the purchases that we're looking for now, if you put it in the budget for 2021, and that is passed at the end of November, and they have their requisition forms ready to go, they're essentially not going to get delivery too much after what the cycle would be if we authorize this bonding. Am I wrong? Is that, I mean, that's my thinking.
So to start, the reason that there is still an amount left, I'm not 100% sure to the specifics. What I do know is that the model of cars that they get were discontinued. There was something with the mini bid process that they had to wait on the second half of the purchases until next year. They're not sitting on it because they don't have cars to buy. They're waiting because of the mini bid process and waiting until the next line of vehicles comes out in early 2020. In terms of now being the time to start looking at moving items over to the operating budget, I would agree that we do have to start looking at it, but we need to have a more structured plan during the budget process, because right now we do not have $1 million to take out of our budget. Our budget's balanced. So
I'm not talking about taking out of this budget. Since you're talking about the 2019 authorization paying for vehicles being delivered in 2020, I'm saying put it in the 2020 budget, 2021 budget for purchases to be made in 2021 for the police vehicles. So around the same delivery time, you put it in, it would be in the same cycle. You're basically saying to us that what we authorized in 2019 isn't going to be delivered to 2020. So what we authorize now isn't going to be delivered till 2021 is the next cycle. And even if it's not 100% the next cycle, I think what we're talking about maybe is maybe a 6-month flex there, where there's a slight delay in order to accomplish this purpose of getting it on the cash side when it's optimum, when you really have that flexibility coming up in the 2021 budget. So that's, and also looking at the fact that, we are up against our debt policy limit. So it's not about the need for the vehicles, it's about delivery time and how do we finance it.
I guess my concern with that is that I'm not sure if those vehicles are needed. I understand your thought process, which is perfectly logical and it might be absolutely accurate, but not knowing the nuances of ordering police cars and when they come in, are we creating a different lag time where, I'm not comfortable taking a risk on that.
But the original planning process said nothing about them, so it can't be that much of an emergency.
They did about these vehicles. They didn't on the special use vehicles.
And what was put in the prior budgets was about 200, when we were looking at our 5-year capital plan for these vehicles, it was about $200,000 less. If you go back 4 years, it was about $3 $350,000, $400,000 less for the projection for what we would be buying in 2020. Now, part of this.
But the
guy-
cost of cars was different
Right,
too.
because they're switching the type of cars that they're purchasing, that's part of the reason for that. But I just note the difference.
Alfredo?
But, you know, in terms of what Mike was saying, there is a difference. It's especially used vehicles predominantly.
Alfred?
I agree with Judy on the fact that I think this should be going into the operations. I've agreed with Judy for the last 3 cycles of bonding. First year, second year, this year, when we've been dealing with this for the last 3 years, from my time, about getting this into operational costs. Part of it is already in our operational costs, because even if we bond it, there's an expense for that year of those bonds anyways. So, you know, do we need extra money to get that? Yes, I think we do. My concern is, I don't want there to be any lag time. I also am concerned that we didn't have this discussion 3 months ago. And that it hasn't been put into the budget for the last 3 years when we've talked about this. I mean, I know we have. And we talked about it, doing it in a way where it would just be, where we would cut it down every year. So that if we would have done that, we'd probably be down to a third of where we are now. So, I understand 100% what Judy's trying to say. My concern is the lag time. My biggest concern, to be honest with you, is right now we have 16 officers graduating tomorrow. They're walking into a situation where there are 47 officers now. They're walking into a situation where they haven't seen a penny raise in over 4 years. They're walking into a situation where they're going to be mandated. They're going to be asked to stay after they've done an 8-hour shift. No matter what you plan on doing tomorrow or what you plan on doing after work, you can't go home. And if you took 2 days off, and if you say you had the weekend off and you took 2 days off, Monday, Tuesday, and you booked the flight with your wife, so hey, get away, you can get mandated, you can go to work on Thursday, get mandated to work Saturday, and there's nothing you can do about it. You gotta find someone to cover your shift, or you gotta tell your wife, I can't take the flight with you. That's the reality our officers are dealing with. That is the reality. So when I see this as something as what is the reality? The reality of us saying we are not going to support purchasing these vehicles because we haven't been able to figure out this probably way before the last 3 years, way before probably any of us were on here. It's a problem. So that's why I do think, and I am going to support this bond, but I'm also going to really emphasize that next year, I'd rather have a conversation about having to raise taxes 0.5% to start getting this off the tax rate, off the bond, because every month paying interest on $1.3 million. I hate paying interest on my mortgage. I hate it. So why are we paying interest when we know we have to do this? And I understand.
The same reason you pay a mortgage.
But you know what? If I didn't have to,
Well, that's,
but I don't pay a car
yeah.
payment.
Wishes are wonderful. Reality is where we have to
The
live.
reality is you make tough choices. I've had the same car I've had for years. My home, I own it outright. And that was hard to do. So, you make some tough choices. So, I'm saying it's not on you only, Mike. It's on us too. Okay? We're the ones that would have had the discussion about raising taxes 0.5% to get the revenue. So it's not only on you, it's on us. I'm saying I would have liked to have had that discussion.
So Do you have information now? I mean, my reaction to this is we really should be asking them, since there's strong support for moving this to the cash side, and I think that there is an opportunity to do it in the way that I'm suggesting. Why don't we ask them to take a look at that proposal and look at the real impacts and come back and report to us?
If we can get information that corroborates your idea of moving it out in a year with less of that debt burden, yeah, we can do that. We can definitely do that.
Okay. And is it possible, I think that we also do need more information on the special use vehicles.
I agree, and that was not really anything, for me, it was just, it was the basic vehicles for the guys on the streets.
Yep, and
That's
that
my
we
major
got
concern.
a lot of information on. But we,
Yeah, so you had this lovely form that you provided all the departments with, and the police department extensively filled out the form with regard to the patrol vehicles, but did not with regard to these special.
Correct, and what they had sent was something that Dave had forwarded to you guys before our last finance committee meeting, and it looks like they identified the location of them with internal codes. So that was what I sent to you guys, was clarifying where they're going to right now. I was talking on the phone with Kevin McDonald, who we can give you much more detailed information that these are not new vehicles, they're replacement vehicles. And
so to remember when you did that beautiful fire truck thing where you talked about this fire truck and like brought it up, like, I don't know that you need to go through that level, but it would be helpful to know.
we can go to that level. I love
like,
fire
I'm
trucks.
in.
I love talking about fire.
But it's just to do
So
that.
we're asking you to talk that into.
Yeah,
I can do
to
that.
do
It's
that,
kinda
to do that
similar.
in terms of these vehicles, to say this SWAT is replacing,
Okay.
you know,
And how,
this
what's the
SWAT.
year,
And
what's the year, what's the mileage on it?
And Alfred, this is something that Judy and I had worked on last year, and it's something that I think is going forward, this committee and budget can work together on it, but, I mean, the fire trucks were separate, turnout gear was $180,000. When you start getting into the $1.3 million range, and I agree 100%, those are big decisions that we have to make. Very big decisions, and whether it's tax levy, whether it's...
And
other things.
I do think it's something where, from the finance committee's perspective, I mean, it'd be great if if the idea that Judy has is able to work, that would be amazing.
Because that would-
If it's not,
I see this as being the year to be able to do that.
If we're
Okay.
finding it, if this proves to be accurate, yeah, I agree.
If it's
It could-
not,
it
for
could be
some
It could be a great timing
it would be very
situation for us to take
helpful
advantage of.
moving
I agree.
forward to see some police cars in there. So maybe it's not, you know, all of them, but maybe even several of them, to show that there is a push in that direction would be very helpful from the council's perspective.
I just want to make sure that nothing we do hinders our officers from getting the vehicles they need.
Agreed.
That's not gonna
Agreed.
happen.
People for
We all agree with that.
the message, I mean, frankly, I don't think they're going to be upset if the delivery of the vehicles is like 3 months later, you know, kind of thing, especially since they're dealing currently with, you know, a significant delay in the delivery of the vehicles because of the change in circumstances. So, you know, but to be able to say, yes, we fully support the replacement of these unmarked vehicles in a timely manner, unmarked and marked vehicles in a timely manner.
Yeah, I do have a
And-
question.
And have a plan to do it.
But Judy, do we still then want more information on the mileage, the wear?
For the
kind of
special
stuff
use
that-
Special
vehicles?
use vehicles, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they have that in here. It's not identified by mileage, but it's identified by total repairs based on the vehicles. But it's something that we can go through and organize in a better way.
That'd be great.
So you mentioned that there was a recall on the vehicles that kind of delayed the delivery of the vehicles.
It was not a recall, they just
recall.
stopped making that type of vehicle.
They stopped making type
Yes.
And so they couldn't buy it until the next year when the new line comes out.
Okay, gotcha. So that's money that we already encumbered for those vehicle purchase, correct?
Yes.
So is there any contractual agreement with whoever the vendor is that, you know, we're being compensated for the delay in that?
There's money encumbered right now, which I believe is being paid out and invoiced, and those are vehicles that we are receiving, but that was only half of the bonded amount. The other half that was remaining, we haven't placed out to bid yet because we're waiting until the new line comes out. So there's no contract that's been violated or anything like that.
And I want to note that this was the night that I wanted least because I have a meeting that I have to go to. It was scheduled around me, like a community meeting. So I need to leave a little after 6:30. So if I seem to be rushing people along, it's not because I don't value your words. It's because I want you to say them quickly.
So we're hovering on this one for further info.
Yeah, so let's hold this one for further info, and we can come back to it. I'd like to just touch, so the next one, 24.101.19, that did not go through the appropriate process in term that the city has for buildings. And I just don't think it's appropriate that I don't have an issue if a department goes through that process and it's denied, and that there's some way, there might be a situation where that might need to come to the council.
That's the holding cell, right?
Correct, but to not go through that process, as I've said to many people, we don't go to engineering to check on safety for things. I don't think we should go to the police to check on engineering things. So,
Can I
Sure.
take this one? I did speak to the chief about this, and he did say the lead abatement one he was backing from because there actually wasn't enough to actually deal with the issue. But the other two, the security upgrade systems and to replace,
that already went through, we passed that.
that already went through?
Yeah.
I thought
That
that was
was-
all part of this 300,000.
Nope, the 300,000 was just,
There is something that relates in this to card access system for all APD facilities.
well then, what they should do is they should come,
$23,000.
we need a separate,
much?
we need a separate.
$23,000.
We're not bonding for that.
No,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
We need
That was-
that's a
that was
separate
never an
thing,
item.
that
That
if
could
they
have been a
want.
component of the $300,000 repairs, but that was
Yeah.
never an item that was.
So indeed, the chief, I just wanted to make sure that people know that there is that piece of it that could be what the chief was talking about.
Okay.
But with regard to the APD security surveillance thing,
Right.
we have approved that. That's like $563,000.
Yeah.
That's a separate thing.
That's the camera upgrades and all that
And
stuff.
we already acted on that, I think. at our last-
It went through the last one, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do they have the funds to be able to make those replacements?
For the 23,000? Yeah.
And for the 84,000 for upgrades to their headquarters?
No, so you mean Morton Avenue?
No, I mean the headquarters on Henry Johnson.
That wasn't,
Yeah, so it says replacement carpet tiles for APD.
that should
Carpet
not,
tiles throughout APD.
they need to go through the process to do that. It's completely inappropriate for them to come directly to the council for
And
that.
that's really maintenance. thing.
Yeah, like go to maintenance, you
I'm
know?
just-
Yeah.
Do they have the funding for it?
Yes, they should have the funding to cover that without having a bond for it. Those are things that we generally don't.
And let's keep
Bond
let's
for.
keep in mind, you're getting a new facility that is going to be completely newly outfitted
Yeah, and
with, office space and office furniture. I mean, I don't know how much it's going to, but
it's going to be,
there's going to be a lot of renovations done to that new training facility upstairs. There's going to be some units that are going to have new office space.
and that space is also going to handle some of their existing problems with their space now, so we really have to let that play out, but, yeah,
But the headquarters isn't moved.
no, but they're looking at how they're going to use it. But 84,000, 23,000, that's money we would find within the context of the budget. We're not going to bond for those.
So this is a $300,000 bond, and you're basically okay with us holding it?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, and is it possible to withdraw that? Because
If the chief is
That would
saying,
be up to you.
I would, I personally would like to withdraw
As long
that.
as
yeah,
they're okay.
yeah, if the chief says let the lead piece go and we can find the rest of it, that's no
Well, I mean,
problem.
I guess from my perspective,
of all, as, finance here together, and then before we withdraw, so we can say we had APD presence with our finance department in the conversation, and just didn't have the conversation
So
without.
we just don't have to act on it at the next meeting.
That's
Right.
fair. It's just,
Okay.
I will say, I think as a finance committee, it's completely inappropriate for a department to come directly to us without going through the process that City Hall has. I'm not interested in seeing building projects that haven't been vetted through engineering, that engineering hasn't even heard of. So I think it's completely inappropriate. So that's why I would like to see that removed. If they have something that they'd like to replace with it, fine, but this is something that I don't think it's appropriate for them to come to us. There's a whole process for it. Follow the process. If they feel like that process wronged them in some way and that it's necessary, I absolutely want them to come to us. And I think that's entirely appropriate. But this is just, it shouldn't come to us. We shouldn't be figuring out lead paint and this and that. None of us are contractors.
I agree. And
None
I
of us
think-
are engineers.
I think
The only
doing
thing I
that,
have-
we run the risk of borrowing money, you know what I mean? And we don't even know the scope of what the projects are.
Exactly. Neither do they.
Yeah.
My point being is, I do think they should be on the table if we're gonna take it off the table. I do, just like I know a lot of people are upset that decisions have been made within the police department without having other people at the table. Same thing goes both ways.
That's fine, but I'm more than happy to say to them, I think it's completely inappropriate for them to jump this out. I mean, if they want to come in and have me say that to them in person, I'm happy to. So I'd like to actually move to the engineering pieces. 28.101.19 is going to be removed, engineering, so that they no longer need that. Withdrawn, yes, thank you.
They still have excess bonding capacity that we have not borrowed against over it.
And you
Right.
had that conversation with Randy, yeah.
Yeah.
No, 28.
Well, and he said he would look into it and follow up saying.
Right. So if we keep talking about engineering and move to 29.101.19, which is the, for engineering, to finance building, in my giant pile of papers, I have Randy's thing. To finance building projects, they do have 1.4 million, I believe, that they are working off of. A lot of this is in support of that, so it's not necessarily for it's for a, they don't have all the bids out, so for the construction process, which I fortunately know, or unfortunately, I don't know a lot about the bidding, more than I should, about the bidding process, but depending on when you put it out and when it comes back in, it is important to have a buffer in that.
So Randy, on December 6th, had emailed the committee saying that, again, he's estimating $1.4 million of payments. He said he would like to have a buffer of 20% in case bids are over. So he was asking for the number to have available to be closer to 1.7 million.
Okay, so here's the problem. This is his document. You see the 20% contingency already against that 1.4?
That's his total projects. He was asking for $500,000 as contingency on top of that. That's why he's not bonding for $1.4 million in this instead of $500,000. That's why he's bonding $500,000 and not bonding $1.4 million, because he has $1.4 million of projects. He's asking for $500,000 for contingency.
Okay, so, but you're saying he's asking for 1.7. And what I'm
would like
saying
to
is because he wants an extra 20% on top, and what I'm saying is his 1.4, Mike, you probably want to take a look at this. his 1.4 already includes like $125,000 for architectural services, which for grease traps, I don't know how you have to have 120, and then another 20% for contingency is already built into what he provided us with in his listing.
Can we recopy that?
I'm sorry, I'm pulling.
No.
I bring all my, so, sure? I don't.
Everything you sent yesterday was printed out in the packet.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, I'm drawing from my files with regards to. You can look at the prior page too, my prior page has exactly everything that's included in it. So part of what I'm trying to do is recognize that there's a reason why he has an extra $1 million worth of bonding authorization sitting out there that already accommodates what we need to do. So we're not supposed to bond. I mean, it's, OSC bonding 101. You're not supposed to bond for speculative things. You're supposed to be bonding for projects that are actually specific proposals on this.
I will say, for construction projects, it's impossible it's all speculative. Every single construction bond is speculative in nature.
I would say in Julie's defense, I would agree with you, but also looks like in here, it's saying that there's 20% contingency built into this.
If he built it in already, then that's there, but it is completely normal you have to.
Well, right, so I'm okay with the 20% that's already there.
Right,
I'm not
I agree.
saying taking the whole total and.
I completely agree. If he's already
20% on top of the 20% contingency.
If he's already factored that in, then it does seem.
Yeah, he's saying that the 20% would bring it to 1.7, but he's already got that 20% factored in here, and he didn't provide additional costs with the other projects, so.
So the consensus is that the contingency is already built into the existing bond.
It looks to me like that is already built into the original request.
I mean, if he has additional projects, I do think that's a different conversation, but if he's already built that in, I agree.
And I like the idea, I mean, frankly, if there's a little bit of overage on it, and that's something where our contingency line would be appropriate to dig into it, or, or other things. I will say, we have reduced our contingency line in the budget to a bare bones kind of thing.
What is the total amount remaining?
Let's see.
But there is, if he goes a little over, there is that. And then there are, intra-departmental.
That 1.5 is what he's saying he has, for 2020 building projects.
So.
And if here's the bottom line, he doesn't need
I think we'll hold that,
$500,000. That's clear.
Well, he doesn't need it for what this explanation in his email states, if it's here. So my only concern is he, I don't say he's confused about his own projects, but did he not express it the way he wanted to? And is there something in addition that we're missing here that requires that?
I would say regardless, it's not something that we're prepared to move on this evening.
All right, so we'll reach back out, or all of us, whoever wants to, can reach back out to Randy and say, you're telling us you need $500,000 for contingency on this listing, but when we see your listing, it already has contingency in there. What's that about? And I think we can get to that pretty quickly.
You want to keep that?
Yeah, I would love to.
You want to keep that, like Michelle, to make it.
Yeah, if you could have Michelle, if it's,
wouldn't mind.
Michelle, if you wouldn't
That'd be
mind,
great.
like
Thank you.
scanning that in and sending that out, that'd be great. Let's go back to the Skyway, 26.1.
What about the last one, the 700 $48.99, 48.1.
But we can do that next. I
DGS
mean,
one.
if we want to do the DGS one and before the Skyway, we can. Works for me.
I know
So,
we had discussed this one before.
48.1, 22.19, and this is Judy's. So, Judy, if you would love to, well, even
So
if you would like to.
I'm a little bit confused about what to do about this. Because my feeling is, just because you don't need the, I think it's like $1.2 million of cards, doesn't mean you then go off and spend it on things without coming back to the council and talking to us about it, et cetera. And I think it sets a bad precedent in terms of really keeping an eye on what we're doing, especially given where we are up against our debt policy limits. The other aspect of this is the bond authorization. This particular ordinance is for a 15-year period of proper usefulness. And then when you look at some of the things that they are asking for us to, they are looking to be supported this year in 2020, it includes things like mobile radios, $40,000 for mobile radios. I don't think it is
Thank you.
appropriate. So, when I did my projections for the chart based on what the council had approved, it included a $1 million reduction for the equipment bonding. And then in the discussions, basically committee members felt like, well, they didn't know that we wouldn't want them to be doing what they're doing. And they had conversations with you, frankly, I think, under these circumstances, somebody didn't.
I was here, during their budget presentation, I explained what DGS was intending to do. I have follow-up emails to what you would email me, October, explaining.
I'm talking about before you have moved down that path with regard to them not including anything in the budget or in the bonding request for new things. So I don't know. I'm talking about in the budget development process, because essentially the issue is they didn't make a request for equipment bonding this year new because they're relying on this new.
They came to me with a 5-year plan for purchasing equipment, and this project was discontinued, and I took 3 years off, and then I left the 4th and 5th year on because the 3 years was going to add up to what was remaining here, and then I took that to you guys and presented saying that's what we would like to do.
Right. So I'm talking about the equity of, well, you guys basically said, oh, it's all right for you to do that, and we're trying to deal with that as opposed to, here's bottom line. I think it's appropriate, given what has happened with this particular bond, for us to go ahead and reduce it and just have them come back to us next year for what they need, et cetera. The question is, what do we do about 2020? And do we give them some room and not take back the full $1 million so that they can make some of these purchases using some of that bonding?
Yeah.
So their balance now is approximately at the time when we had made the plan, it was at $1.3 million. So over the next 3 years, what DGS had came to us with and their capital plan for all their equipment has been given to you guys on a continuous basis. Joe Gablehouse has that on his computer. That's the same file that he continuously updates that hasn't changed. And that's $1.3 million over the next 3 years. What they were asking for 2020 was $465,000. So realistically, in all they need is for 2020 is $465,000. And since it is a ban, what I had talked to Mike about was probably the best thing to do after talking to the council was in the first quarter of 2020 was to purchase the equipment then, so that then they would only have to continue to ban or borrow for the amount that was spent. So then you could, after they spent that, you realistically could eliminate the ban and only borrow for what they've currently spent, so that you're not over borrowing. And then we can just add what they would spend in 21, 22 back into the capital plan.
So what amount should we put in this bonding ordinance to cover that?
So DGS currently needs $465,000 was what they were anticipating spending on equipment in 2020.
The problem being now, they are spending it on things with a different period of practical usefulness than is authorized by this bonding ordinance. For things like the radios, $40,000. These things, and in general, the council has counseled against purchasing, putting things in bonding that are like, under $30,000. So we have a club car turf 2 for $14,000. We have a John Deere hydro. Normally, those would be under the local finance law provisions, a 5-year period of probable usefulness. So it's kind of inappropriate to include them under this particular bond. There's also a Cushman core harvester, a Toro Parkmaster. These are all things for the golf course. So my gut on this is that we should pare down their request slightly. By adding something, not reducing this so much as is proposed, so giving them some flexibility to purchase things that appear to have an appropriate period of practical usefulness, and then for them to come back and either find the money in the budget elsewhere, because some of this should be on the cash operating side anyway, or come back to us next year. And frankly, we don't have, so now we're making determinations on something that we don't have any information, and anyone may have information about the special use vehicles.
I would argue you have a significant amount of information on it. There's additional tabs at the bottom that Joe has that identify useful life. There's all those things that are identified with them.
So
That's true. You're right. There's, it winds up being, when you try and put it on one page.
It's like
Yeah.
have you seen
You need a lot of
mine?
files.
I ended up
this is my
like
paper.
killing like 1,000 trees.
Yeah, you need to look at it.
Right.
I didn't realize it was this
Computer
much.
screen.
But that's the.
But
No,
in
this
terms
is-
in
yeah,
terms of having
it's-
information,
I
Joe
printed it
Joe
out, and
Gieselhaus
I was
has-
like, it just
he's
kept
better
going.
prepared than anyone else I could think of.
Right. So when you look at this, actually, when you look at this column, you see where a number of these purchases are listed for a 10-year period, service life. Most of them are listed for a 10-year service life. And so that's a concern.
I don't think we're going to sit here and go through comparing lawnmowers to John Deere tractors and stuff. What's a reasonable figure? to put in
Why
this?
don't we find a reasonable figure for that?
I can
And-
give that to you by next week. I'll talk to DGS and we can work it out.
Oh, that one?
Yeah.
All right,
I
we'll
mean,
hold that
you
one
know,
too.
What they gonna do what?
I'm
That's
kind of
on hold.
thinking
It's
having the difference, something like that this year, and then just, deleting the rest of the bond. Again, this is about, especially since we're up against our debt limit, really getting control and really understanding what we're doing.
I mean, really, and again, to agree with Judy, 2021 and 2022, I mean, it would probably be better to go and do it that way. It's just a matter of 2020, and given the situation that there was this funding that wasn't able to be used, it would prevent us from over borrowing. And but in terms of the useful life,
Given, the flexibility that I, have talked about with regard to the bonding, it's kind of like, it kind of came back and snapped me when I saw this one. it, wasn't exactly what I think that we intended.
I agree, but I also thought that we were trying to be transparent with it. It wasn't like we were hiding it from you.
Right.
So,
Can I just get one clarification? So this would be, the current way it's written is to reduce the bond by $1 million.
yes,
You're saying DGS is okay with reducing it by $535,000?
Something like
Yeah.
that.
It'll be something like that, but understand that then for 2020 and 2021, they're going to be adding equipment to their 5-year capital plan.
Whereas this is already replacing those future requests.
so can't we rely on Nick's number?
But when they add it to their capital plan, that doesn't mean there has to be bonding, and we need to
Correct.
be looking.
I agree.
And something
Yes.
like a
These
$14,000
small, yeah,
item is easier to tackle than,
So can I suggest making it from 799,000
He's
to
gonna give us a number.
yeah, I'll
Yeah,
give you.
We're
We're-
gonna have to, before our next.
before.
Yeah,
our
we
next-
have
We're
to,
gonna have
we already
hopefully
have a
Some of
whole,
these issues, it's gonna be a short meeting, because some of these issues can have.
Yeah.
big life.
So we're approving that contingent upon the number of which you're going to
Correct.
give us.
yeah. I think we'll hold
For
it
that
on
or
to
what?
the,
Hold
well,
and having it.
yeah, let's just
Because you
hold
have to
it
change the
for,
number.
well, we have to anyway, so. Otherwise I would definitely go down your route, Mike, but I'm so far failing in my first finance committee meeting, passing things through. So now we move on to 26.101.19, the Skyway. There has been quite a bit of discussion on this. We have Councilmember Love is here as well, who represents the district. I know that was important for several members to hear from her on this.
How
Well,
much
I
of this
think-
is refundable for?
All but 1.4 million.
So I'm going to do 1.4 million.
And
And I think I also have questions. I know that Assemblymember Fahey is proposing a study to remove the 787 ramp altogether.
yes,
So I need to know how this is going to fit into this whole Skyway project. And I don't think we have the time tonight to discuss that. So can I recommend that we hold, in the interest of time, I want to respect your time, that we hold this until,
I mean, I will say in terms of that, I know that that's a discussion that's happening. We are not going to get any, just working in state government, we are
Gotcha.
not going to get any answers. I mean, that's kind of, although I love the idea of it and I fully support it, it's along the same lines as like,
Yes.
let's make
But-
canals all through Albany
But
and
wouldn't-
go by
wouldn't-
boat.
And Jim, I just want to add to that.
Agreed.
I mean, Pat has been looking at that for a long time.
Mhm.
And
I
we
gotcha.
found out that, we are talking 10, 15, 20 years before something like this could ever happen. They
Gotcha.
just spent millions of dollars to upgrade the bridges going into the plaza there. So I think.
that's because there's
what-
cars still traveling.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But we're talking, it was a huge investment. So any study that's going to be done is a wonderful thing, but it is a long,
I got you.
But
But-
could I just comment to that? Wouldn't an engineer worth his salt in accepting $3.3 million to do an engineering study want to know some of those questions?
Right.
Because certainly, okay, let's say it's going to take 15 years to accomplish a new 787. Are we then bonding several millions of dollars for a useful life of a bridge?
This is what I would say though,
Worth
if we're actually
something less than the
looking,
useful life of a John Deere tractor?
if we're actually looking at the 787, getting rid of that, we're talking about 15 years before we even get to the project, which would probably be another 10-year thing, depending on what it is. So
But
I
why
don't,
spend $1.4 million?
I don't think that we're even in that realm. I mean, it's something where it's a great idea, but again, so are canals all through the city of Albany and traveling by boat.
But I also
So-
think,
There was a study done.
are we talking about canals and boats?
It has been mentioned. It's actually a great
There was a study
idea.
done in 2018.
Oh.
There was a study done in 2018 where various options were looked at. And it included this whole spaghetti area of ramps and highways, it's actually like 12 lanes going across in this particular location. And that study noted that this particular ramp, the ramp that it joins, so keep in mind that this ramp loops around, but there's another ramp that comes in. Also, so it's connected, structurally connected to this. And also the Water Street ramp and Colony Street, those are all underutilized and were identified as potentially being completely removed because of this essentially 12 lanes of cement and iron, metal that separates the city from the waterfront, and this all adds to that. So, when I was reading that and reading all of the Albany report and all, I'm realizing, well, they say it's going to be some time spending money on things that should, by all rights, be completely eliminated to help provide access. And my concern is you reinforce this particular ramp, and then you're basically telegraphing to people, telegraphing to the designers who are looking, at what do we do, that this is now a fixture, and don't touch it. And especially my concern is that.
Yeah, precisely. Like, we would advocate that the park remain a park, regardless of whether 787 in its entirety.
I don't speak for Assembly Member Fahey. She speaks for herself, but she was very clear. She doesn't see these two things as mutually exclusive. She has been a key component in securing state funding for this project. She supports it. So I think, her actions speak for themselves and her words speak for themselves. When she introduced this legislation for a study, she was very clear. She sees this as a great project, and these are not mutually exclusive. She supports both studying, the future of 787 and seeing this project to fruition. We couldn't have done this without her.
Okay.
Quick question, how much, let's go back to the numbers. How much, other than the $1.4 million, how much more is it going to cost us, because this is just for the study, to get this up and running, or is it all the funding going to come from the state beyond the 1.4?
What do you mean by the study?
Well, isn't this just for an engineering study?
This is a local match for us to execute on a $5 million TAP award that we received from the Department of Transportation. So this is required match in order to spend this money.
But this is just a study. This doesn't put any money to start construction.
No,
This is a portion of building it out.
Yeah.
This coupled with
I haven't found hearing it.
this funding is coupled with as part of the $5 million TAP grant, along with the DRI funding, and the 3.1 that's been awarded by the state already by Governor Cuomo is altogether part of the build out of the Skyway. So not for a study.
With this, the build out and opening and turning into a functional linear park is 100% paid for with this bond.
So,
Okay,
just want to make sure I get this. You're saying, other than $1.4 million, and the bonds for 3.3, but 1.9 of it's going to be refunded, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
In
So
conjunction
other
with
than
the
$1.4 million, the rest of it's going to be covered by state, federal funding, and no other requests for bonds or funding to get this up and off the ground.
Yeah, that is
All of that
correct.
has been already secured.
Yes, that is correct.
And what was the maintenance
So
on?
the design report that we got from the state last year said something about this being 11.3 million, and I'm not coming, so what has been dropped out in terms of the work that's being done?
They're, basically park level, fixture items, they had to remove some green infrastructure because the weight, water retention and so forth, they were worried about the weight. We took out other fixtures, so that we could have a full linear park that matched basically the funding sources that we secured. But it doesn't preclude additional amenities down the line if that's something that we identify or the community identifies that they want. Yeah.
So does the
Well,
state,
just Councilmember Robinson.
No, my question was, what's going to be the maintenance? Because
Yeah,
that's not
right.
going to be refunded by
We're still
the,
working on a maintenance and operations agreement, but what we're working towards, and we've said this publicly, is we will commit that we would be maintaining basically the park infrastructure, what's on the top of it, and we would expect the Department of Transportation to maintain maintenance responsibilities for the actual structure beneath that, you know, park
Beneath the
infrastructure.
track, essentially.
Yeah.
and who's going to actually own that infrastructure,
It's a
the
long-term,
seven
lease,
space?
that infrastructure, as it's at least, it would still be owned, right?
By the state.
By the state.
It would essentially,
Wait,
yes. It would
so-
essentially be a long-term lease by the city.
Yeah.
Could
So
be a
we're-
long-term lease by the city?
Correct.
Oh, how much is that?
The dollar figure you mean?
Yeah.
That we're still all negotiating, but
so we're going to be leasing it from the city and we're putting more money forward
From the state.
from the,
Leasing
I mean,
from the
for
state.
leasing from the state and
we're
but the
essentially,
city's
we're essentially
splitting the
putting out
bill.
approximately 10% of the total cost of the build out.
Yeah.
For the entire project. With the goal that we are not maintaining anything beneath the deck. So we're essentially, we would be maintaining anything like in any other park. We're maintaining the top, the,
What we are, yeah, what we
That's
have
the-
expertise in.
that's the goal.
That is, I mean, that's the only, from our perspective, that's the only reasonable outcome for this, and they understand that.
Yeah.
The
This
only
is a-
reason what?
The only reasonable outcome from our perspective, it would be, we don't maintain the type of infrastructure that would exist below the dam. That's just not, it's not, we wouldn't take on that liability. It's not something we're willing to do, so.
So the question that I asked a month ago is, where is the precedent for a municipality agreeing to maintain state property?
I think you could say that it's no different than the post office renting space in the Capitol. They don't own that land, the state owns that land. The federal government rents it from the state. They maintain the fixtures, the state maintains everything else. It's no different than that.
I will say the Hudson J Park, which some people are familiar with, the turnaround park at the Empire State Plaza, is state property, continues to be state property, that they do nothing to maintain, that is leased, not leased, but there's an agreement, a municipal agreement with the state that allows us to use it for municipal purposes. DGS maintains the grounds like mowing and stuff like that, and actually two neighborhood associations do other work on it, but that's state property that was improved as a project that did not involve the state. It used to be state property, although we have long-term use of it. I don't know if that's comparable, but it's just something out there.
So a lot, my problem is a lot really, we have an idea that is approaching being a plan, but we don't have a plan currently. We don't have in front of us, what is the real agreement, et cetera. Last year, I was asking Randy about the questions about the maintenance costs. And he, essentially, all he could talk about were the bridge inspection costs, nothing about what it costs to maintain the infrastructure, on top of that. One of my questions is this going to, depending upon what the design is this going to require, special vehicles, special equipment or something like that? I don't know. So we don't have, and again, OSC, basic capital planning talks about when you are talking about capital planning, you look at all the costs, including the cost of operation over time.
So can I, again, last time I appeared before this body, I made a commitment, if the council was interested, that we could allow you to have to approve a maintenance and operations agreement prior to authorizing us to bond for this. That is still an offer if that is your concern. But that question
So that's very unusual. Essentially, we would be floating bonds to bondholders saying, we may or may not do this project. And that's generally not accepted bonding practices.
We're asking this body to move forward an authorization. We're not asking this body to borrow tomorrow. We're asking for the
You
authorization.
can come to us and ask for the authorization when you're ready to borrow.
So this is all happening in earnest, you know, I mean, these negotiations are happening now. Unfortunately, you know, it's a very difficult time of year. There's a state of the state, you know, there's preparing a state budget. But we're working as quickly as we can. Again, this is a project that has already resulted in tens of millions of dollars of investment throughout that corridor, including affordable housing. You know, there's a lot of excitement about this project. We've secured, over 90% of the funding. This is to allow us to execute on a $5 million TAP award that we won. And again, the council has supported this project when we brought it before this body for support letters for the DRI, of which this was the premier project. During CFA funding applications. So, you know, it's not as though the council hasn't supported this in previous iterations.
So just to kind of have a few, I have to leave in 5
Yeah, but I think he
so
has
I
an
want
issue
to.
with what the council really supported the last time.
Well, I think, I mean, I guess to me that's a valid point, but it's also, I don't know that necessarily impacts whether or not we're actually going to move forward on this. So what I would like to say, my question is about.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but can I ask Joyce to speak, Ms. Love? Because last year, I abstained for this because it didn't have support from their council representative, it didn't have support from the neighborhood association, you know, and that's a neighborhood that has not had a lot of investment, a lot of money going into it. So, you know, to me, I kind of want to hear from someone
I agree with that.
Well, further discussion with Brian Shea and other members of the mayor's office. And looking at, you know, everything that's been said and the money that's being awarded from TAP, I had decided that I would try to move it out with a favorable recommendation. You know, last year, I struggled with this a little bit last year. And I still think I was correct about my ward being one of the poorest wards in the city of Albany, and I still say that. But like I said, with further discussion with some of the members of City Hall here, that I think that I was going to give it a go. And I mean, I know I'm looking at you, Judy, and I know that you know.
I think.
Why the change? What are some of the things, the benefits you see, Joyce?
Well, I see the ward, my ward benefiting from this as far as jobs and reconstruction of some of the vacant buildings and some.
We explained too, like, this is going to be, it's jobs, I mean, there are going to be permanent jobs in the village, but it's also vendor opportunities for businesses in Arbor Hill and throughout the city that tell us they want the opportunity to be able to sell.
And I promise to work closely because if I do this, I want to make sure that my ward benefit from this. I want to make sure that the people in my ward, they're struggling for jobs, get jobs, and I'm willing to work with this 100%. I don't want to be cut out on anything. I think that the buildings that they promised to reconstruct, I think that, you know, I'll be there 100% to make sure that we get, you know, what I need in the neighborhood to make it, you know, better to live in. I know, like I said, you know, everybody got their different thoughts, but I'm willing to take a chance on this, and I'm willing to work with it. So I wanted to come out of committee with a favorable recommendation. So, you know.
Would you settle for coming out of committee with no recommendation? Because I get a few issues with it, but...
I think we need more information. Just
Well,
like the other one.
can I ask one question?
Yeah, sure.
What is the timeline on this?
It's an aggressive timeline. You know, the goal is to have this open by the fall of 2021.
Yeah, and construction needs to start this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
But
support
you need to
Mike's
have the
suggestion.
agreement first.
Yeah.
So why don't we get the agreement and then we do the authorization?
Okay.
To be clear, this was highlighted twice in the governor's state address yesterday. This project in particular was highlighted twice. It is a very aggressive timeline with multiple moving parts, and we continue to offer the ability for the council to review the M&O agreement before we bond. But we need the authorization to be able to move forward on our end with executing this project and getting it open in 2021 for one quarter sets of tracks in the region.
So I agree with Judy. I think I would like to have further discussion on it. So can we come back since we're holding all the other bonds, can we come back bring this back our next meeting, or that we have to move?
I guess I personally think this is a conversation for the whole council. So that's why I would like to see it moved through the committee. It was going to be my recommendation to move it through the committee with no recommendation. And then I think the conversation should be happening with the council as a whole.
Yeah, and we're happy
I
to do
agree.
it. I do want to point out that the council member for the ward has requested a favorable recommendation. You know, I do think, and that has been the message to us
Right.
since day one.
And that's
I think the council
But we
needs to
need
see that we
understand that
support it
generally a
favorably.
committee gets the information that the council needs to make an informed decision. And just like we're doing that with the other bonds, if the
Respectfully.
mayor, if the governor wants this project, then the people that you're dealing with regard to the negotiation of the agreement should be hearing that as well, and we should have the agreement momentarily.
I mean,
This body has authorized bond authorization, has recommended bond authorization to move forward with the entire body without having that information in front of us before. As recently as the last meeting when we talked about the road repair, which again is contingent upon getting the whole body of the information before making the final vote. So I don't see how this is any different.
I also think that this is a situation where, as a committee, there is not any more information we have the information that is needed. Now it is something where I think it's a full council decision.
I
I
agree
move
with
to table.
I move table as well.
You can second me.
You
A
can second.
Oh, yeah. Second.
All in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Against?
I don't get a vote, right?
You don't get a vote, yeah. I'm against tabling it.
What
I
about
guess,
Fallon?
what are you guys voting?
I agree with Mike's suggestion of.
So we have a vote
need to
on,
vote
so
on
are you voting
No, I'm not
against
voting
tabling?
No.
Mike?
No.
Okay. So, do you want to do a motion to move it out of the committee with no recommendation?
That's what Mike said, and I don't mean, do you want to make
Okay,
a
I'll do a
motion?
motion to move it with no recommendation.
And I'll second that.
All in favor? So Farrell, O'Brien, Ballerin in favor, against? Deshay and Robinson against. So it moves through with no recommendation.
And Dave and Brian,
Yeah.
you're going to give us a heads up on these negotiations that we can have a listening seat on?
And I'm going to call this meeting over. We don't need to take a vote, but if people want to vote on it, they can.
Thank you.
Second.
Seriously.